Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, lovely people. This is Maria Leslie with yet another episode of Unsilence Grief. And today I've got the lovely Chanoa Inez next to me. And Chanoa and I connected on this beautiful platform, Podmatch, that I have mentioned so many times because I've found absolutely lovely guests for our podcast here. And this morning I'm coming in bright and shiny. I have no idea where to move to. The sun is following me. So Noah, would you do us the honor to introduce yourself to our audience? Welcome.
Sure. I'm the author of Dream On, How to Create the New Life of Your Dreams After Upheaval or Loss, and the creator of Magnetize Your Personal Brand, which basically combines personal transformation and personal branding.
I love that. And we definitely get a little bit more into the personal branding as well, because we just had a quick chat before we went live, and I love it. But before we get there, I would absolutely love for you to share your story. What is your connection with grief? Because you've got quite a personal story behind that that really touched me, hence you're here. So you're welcome to share as much as you like.
Okay, yeah. Uh, I'll start from the point where I was living in Miami with my boyfriend who's from Montenegro.
Hmm.
And, I loved so many different things about his culture. I started learning the language. And then when I went on vacation, I had a really hard time coming back to Miami. I wanted to stay there. So we
Hmm.
made a deal that the next summer we'd go for vacation and stay. So we'd basically leave our things in storage in Miami and see if it worked out business-wise in
Yeah.
Europe and then finalize the move, or we could always go back.
Mm.
So we did go there the next summer, and the first day was just really magical. We got to spend a lot of time with his family in the capital, his
Hmm.
parents. And then we went to the seacoast. My friend was nice enough to give us his condo for the weekend in this one seaside town. And it was
Oh,
just
so
like,
nice.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was just one of those moments where, everything felt perfect. And it was the first time I felt like that, in my
Mhm.
20s, that I just felt like,
Yeah.
wow, there's no problems. Everything's just really wonderful. But unfortunately, I woke up in the morning and he did not. He passed away from a clot. And yeah, it was just as devastating as, you could imagine. It was, yes, he passed away. And then everything that we had, like, shared, our families together and then
Yeah.
also our dreams, our shared dreams, and this new life we just started.
You were literally just, oh my God. For me, when I listen to you, and this is the second time I'm hearing your story, I I can just see something like that in the movies, you just hardly ever hear that happening in real life, which is so bizarre because obviously it would be the other way around. It happens a lot more often than we know, unfortunately. But then actually being in that, there's a saying in my mother tongue in German where you say, I feel like I'm in the wrong movie. Exactly that. That can't be true. This is just so surreal when something like that happens. So you're like in a new country, haven't got a lot of friends or connections yet, apart from his family, probably, and you wake up with your partner next to you, not waking up, which is I can't even imagine that. That would be so horrific. Um, what was your first thing that you did? It's such a bizarre question to ask, but it must have been such a shock moment for you. You
Mm.
didn't even speak the language, right?
No, and I probably knew like a maybe 100 words then. Like it was
Oh
very
wow.
basic. I didn't know how to say hope, I remembered thinking
Yeah.
I don't have this word.
Yeah.
Um, at first, it's interesting you use the word surreal. No one has used that
Mm.
word, and I haven't used it, and you really brought me back to that moment. That's exactly what it was. It just felt
Mm.
like, wait, this can't be happening. Like it was extremely confusing.
Yeah.
Um, I just honestly just did a few circles in the apartment, like I didn't know what to do, and I finally decided to just open up the balcony doors and call for help. And that
Yeah.
was really jarring because it was really sunny. It was in the summer. There's like people are walking, smiling, going to the beach, and I'm,
Yeah.
yelling for help. Thankfully, there was a family staying well, they owned the unit below us and they came up to help, and the daughter spoke perfect English, and she happened to have seen
Mm.
us at dinner the night before. We were dancing there and she was watching us
Oh.
dance.
Yeah.
So that worked
How
out. She
old
was
was the
able to,
daughter?
she was in high school still. I think she was like 16. Um,
Wow.
so that helped. And, she was there, her mother, and I can't remember, there was someone else there, but from her family, I can't remember who, but
Yeah.
it was good. They got to help me with everything, calling the paramedics and dealing with everything. And they were trying to, get me to calm down, so that, it's not good for your
Yeah.
health, right? Like that shock,
Yeah.
what you're feeling for your emotions. It was all
Yeah.
very shocking, but thankfully she was there and they came up in a few moments. And then I had to start making phone calls, and it was just,
Mm.
it was really, it was just
Yeah.
like you said, it was like a movie.
Yeah. I remember because, when I heard about Rob's passing, my husband, that's all like I can remember now. Everything was just so surreal. It was such a slow motion moment for me, but it felt like the world was spinning so much faster around me. And I just, those first phone calls that you make, you just, everything just all of a sudden kicks into functioning mode in your brain. I don't know how you felt, but there was this, I got to call, I got to make this call, I got to make that call, I got to call this person. And so I'm not going to ask you about those details because I feel they are very, very private, those phone conversations. But what did you do after that? Because you're in a foreign country, and then how long did you stay? What did you do? Did you go back? What was life like afterwards? Because it must have been such a, again, yeah, surreal and very um, tremendous time for you to get through this.
Yeah, it really was. I stayed, and half the people I knew were saying like, "Go back to Miami. That's crazy. Don't stay
Yeah.
there." And the other half were
Mm,
like, "No, it's a good idea. You should stay here."
mm, yeah.
Um, and I'm glad I made that decision. It was going to be difficult
Yeah.
either way, but I was
Yeah.
somewhere I wanted to be. Um, and even though it was his country, I had different memories of him in his country. I feel like, our everyday lives in Miami, every little errand would have probably sent me, we had so many more memories together in Miami.
Yeah.
I think it would have been much more difficult, or bumping into people who are then asking me
Yeah.
where he is.
Yeah, of course.
So it's just very, yeah, very different experience. And then on top of it, just like spending so much more time in nature, staying in
Mm,
Montenegro that whole time, then um, after the summer, I went back to the States to organize our effects that were in storage. And then I moved
mm,
to Belgrade upon the advice of my friends who thought the off season in Montenegro would be too quiet. But I ended up moving full time to Montenegro a couple of years later and did like
wow.
half and half those couple of
Yeah.
years. Yeah, so it was a very unique experience. I definitely took the
Mm,
grief extra hard those first 2 years, but it was also, it also helped in a lot of ways being there. Also, he was Orthodox Christian, so being able to spend time with his family for all the different dates for tradition for the grieving, including
yeah.
like the 40 days after and stuff, being there, um, I really would not have liked to miss out on all of those
Mm.
moments. Yeah.
And it's so beautiful. So the family really took you in afterwards.
Oh yeah, I
His
was close to
family.
his
Yeah.
family. So that was the first time
Mm.
I met his parents, unfortunately, the day before he passed. But
Oh
his
my goodness.
sister also lived in Florida. She still lives there. We're very close. So I knew his family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Through my own journey through grief and taking thousands of others on that path, I think I have learned really, really well to look at those little things. I call them the hidden gifts in adversity that you
Hmm.
often only see afterwards. And when you just said that, it gave me such a little tingle to know. And in my head, I was like, oh my God, I'm so happy that you met his parents before he passed, because that could have gone differently. And I think it's such a blessing that you had this one moment with all of you together. That to me is such a gift that was able to happen before he died. Have you how are you with those hidden gifts? Have you found them along the path?
Yeah, I have. I mean, right now, even getting to the point where I wrote the book, it's completely not where I saw my life going.
Mm,
But I was able to see throughout all the learning things the hard way, and honestly, spending a lot. more time, a lot of time really deeper in grief than I needed to, learning kind
Yeah.
of the hard way, trial and error, that I'm able to help people, come out of that sooner. So it did actually
Mm.
change the course of my life. It's not like, there are a lot of gifts, but a lot of them were hard to accept because I think
Yeah.
in the early days, people were trying to make me see the bright sides
It doesn't work
too
like that.
soon, and I didn't want to see
Yeah.
it. Like,
Yeah.
at least he was next to you, he passed away next to
Mm.
you. I was like, okay, great. This is like a week after
Yeah.
he passed away. Like, I couldn't,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I find it really interesting, and thank you so much for mentioning that so openly, because I have often talked about that grief and gratitude don't go hand in hand. There needs to be
Mm,
somebody in between. There needs to be a space in between, and that space to me is healing. Um, And ironically, a lot of people would say, gratitude will help you heal, but I feel with grief in particular, it's the opposite. You need to heal first before you can accept gratitude back into your life. I was like that. I really struggled with actively practicing gratitude. It wasn't that I was not grateful for things in my life, but it was not the number one tool that would have helped me out of grief. When people said, "Oh, at least this," or "be grateful that," I'm like, bugger off. You have no idea. You have no idea. And that, to me, I still stand by that. Even though it's almost 8 years for me now, I still stand by there needs to be a space in between. I never ever suggest to anybody who's grieving, or just be grateful for fill in the blanks. That doesn't work like that. Um, so Noah, you also mentioned that you said you stayed in that intense grief for too long. Do you mind elaborating on that a little bit? What do you mean by that, and how you think in hindsight it could have been differently,
yeah.
and
I
why?
mean, sure.
Sorry.
If I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have allowed myself to kind of let the grief carry me.
Mm,
I would have these intense times. I had beautiful times too, but there would be times like difficult, I could go home and I'd sit in a chair and I'd suddenly start thinking about him, and I might sit there for 4 hours, and I'd be like,
mm,
I'm getting up, and I can't get up. And I feel
yeah.
like in a way I was kind of succumbing to the grief in many ways. And that's what led to, I started having health challenges a couple of years after he
Yeah.
passed away, and I didn't know it was related to that. But I think it's
Mm,
because I didn't really, I feel like there's some kind of meter needs to be in place, because I think grief can be very harmful to us emotionally and
mm,
physically.
mhm. So you also said if you would have known then what you know now, you would have done it differently. Can you share how you would have done it differently? Because you now
Hmm.
help others to do that, correct?
Hmm. I mean, I, I've always been an optimistic person, but during that
Hmm.
period, I just had such a like negative outlook on so many things,
Mm,
especially his passing.
hmm.
And I know that that's not healthy, but later on I would find out I had a victim mindset before that even happened. So when that happened, it
Hmm.
really cemented it for me.
Yeah.
Um, So, I was writing poems and things like that. And I'm so glad, someone told me I should write a book. I'm so glad I did not, because it would have been so dark. I just
Hmm.
didn't really, I couldn't really see it for, what it was. And it's still
Yeah.
not, a nice thing that he passed away, but I'm able to
Mm,
really honor his life and really treasure that time that we had together. Whereas before I was
yeah.
just so upset about it.
Hmm. And you mentioned that your partner was Orthodox Christian. Has Are you in the same faith?
I converted shortly after he passed away.
Hmm.
His sisters basically call it godmother, this translation.
Mm,
But I'm no longer a religious person. So I
yeah.
still recognize my saint day.
Hmm.
And that saint means a lot to me. And if there's an Orthodox church nearby, I would be happy to
Hmm.
light some candles and things like that
Hmm.
to, for him. and for people who are living. But yeah, I'm not a religious person, but that is interesting because we did used to go to church a lot and a lot of events at the church since we
Yeah.
just started dating. So
Hmm.
that was like part of a grief reaction. I was also like, it was like something to bridge us closer to make it more official.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm always very interested in hearing people's spiritual response to grief or to the passing. I feel there's often some real beauty in that. Are you okay sharing about what it was like for you from a spiritual background?
I am okay. There's really not
Mm.
too much to say though. Like I would go to church
Okay.
and, but
Mm.
it's not
Sorry, I'm going to rephrase that. I
okay.
meant more in regards to your boyfriend's passing, as in, would you mind sharing what your beliefs are?
Ah,
What happens after that,
right.
or how is your connection with him now, if at all? So everybody's so different around, depending on your spiritual background, what you believe, what happens thereafter, or do you stay connected or not? Like everybody experiences that very differently. So I was just
Yeah.
wondering if you would be okay to share a bit about that.
Yeah. It's interesting because when I lived in Montenegro, like too much time passed since I visited his grave, I felt like I felt guilty, but now my
Mm.
perspective has shifted so much because I know he's not there.
Mm.
That's a site of pain for me, that's where we really said
Yeah. Wow.
goodbye. And now, when I finally, many years later, when I finally cultivated this relationship with myself and let go of so much of the pain I was carrying from his passing, I actually started
Hmm.
to feel a lot more connected to him. And I really don't
Hmm.
think that we go away. I think we're in a
Yeah.
different place. And I mean, it's hard to say to go back and to say, oh, I wish that and that. Everything is the way it
Yeah.
was supposed to be.
Yeah.
But
I
it would have been a
agree.
lot, it would have been a very different experience if I had felt that way then.
Yeah.
But yeah, my pain
Yeah.
blocked that out. I feel I would
Mm.
have sensed him sooner.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful that you say that, because I feel, what you say, like it's easy to say, I wish I had, but everything is just the way it was meant to be. In terms of, I often feel that the passing of somebody so close to us is often also a trigger for a deeper spiritual transformation. Would you agree?
Mm,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, and that to me it was definitely the case, and so there was not even an option to that I could have known or felt or believed what I believed through uh, Rob's passing. You know what I learned. I had a moment that I then called my spiritual epiphany, where I had a huge realization that this was our soul contract. And
Mm,
it gave me so much peace and so much love and acceptance in all of that. But this is nothing that I could have had beforehand. It happened through his passing that I had this realization or this spiritual epiphany. So you mentioned earlier on that you said you were really glad that you didn't write a book in that time because it would have been really dark. Yet you ended up writing a book. Can you tell us how it came to the process, and what is the book about? Tell us about Dream On.
yeah. Um, well, first, I could just quickly mention what happened after the grief because that's what led me there. I say
Absolutely.
thankfully now is that
Mm,
I had many health challenges, including food allergies. They just kept springing up, and I didn't
mm-hmm,
know that they were connected to the grief. I eventually realized they were connected to emotions, and
mm-hmm,
they led me to go into things like meditation, yoga, and trying all these different
mm-hmm,
things. But they just kind of kept me you know, I think from not getting worse.
mm-hmm,
But everything just seemed off. And the
mm,
good side is that I kept, looking for something more. And when he'd passed, I
yeah.
had never even meditated or anything like that. So anything difficult I had in
Mm-hmm,
my life before
yeah.
he passed, that was stuff I kind of just, it kind of just got quiet. You put that stress in the corner and you keep moving. So I
Yeah.
developed all those tools. But still, nothing really changed until materially until I moved back to the States. I was missing the States. I
Mm.
moved to LA. And changing that environment, suddenly I was able to eat a lot of foods I couldn't eat before. And I
Wow.
started recognizing the victim mindset. There was still
Hmm.
a lot of like a long way to go, but a few years after that, I realized, oh, I keep saying that I love myself, that I know what self-love is. But then I looked and it was like, oh, the romantic partner I had at the time and the best friend at the time, the two people I spent the most time with, they were the fact that I chose to spend the most time with those two people, that was not loving to me. And I
Mm.
realized that, and it was really jarring because it was just like, oh, how could somebody who spends so much time talking about these things, reading about these things, doing these different modalities,
Mm. Yeah.
how could I have not seen that? And it was just like very, it was very
Mm.
shocking to me. But then it really helped me see what that big missing piece was. And that piece was missing to a degree before he passed away. And I think that's
Hmm.
also why I responded to his passing in the ways that I did, because
Hmm.
the self-love was not developed enough and we had our identities so intertwined. So when he was gone, I felt like,
Mm.
a fraction of myself, basically.
Yeah. I love that you share this so openly because I feel this is one of the most important messages. I can very much relate to that journey of coming back to self-love, how important that is. And it was a big missing piece in my life also. So I can really relate to that. And I still to today believe that self-love is the base to everything, anything that you want to be successful in, whether that's business, whether that's relationship, whether that's relationship to your family, to your children, to your friends. Um, if you don't have self love at the base of all of it, nothing's going to be successful long term, including business. I found it really, really interesting. Um, so I love that you mentioned that and share that so openly because victimhood is something that is really, really hard to discover. And it
Yeah.
also feels very uncomfortable when you find that. I also unfortunately know that from experience. So but when you start working through it, and it definitely took me over a decade to really go through all the layers that I had built up around that. It is such a freeing moment when you realize it. And I think, when you said, I can't believe I didn't see that. I think it's very hard to see when you're in it. It's so much easier to see when you're in the outside perspective.
Yeah.
So I think it's phenomenal that you got to that point and that you did work on it and then dream on was sort of a
Oh,
result
yes.
of that. Talk about that.
Right.
It's
So my
incredible.
life got to a point where it was like, wow, everything was going right. And then I started doing a more advanced form of meditation. And I kind of made it like my full-time business outside of my business to just keep
Yeah.
going. Because it was like,
Hmm.
let's go.
I love it.
And so I
Yeah.
had a moment where I came home one day and I'm walking across the living room and I realized, wow, I just stepped out of that cloud of grief now. It was 11 years since he
Oh,
passed. And it
I'm
was just
having
like
goosebumps. Oh.
jarring, yes. And I literally took one more step, and the next thought was, I have to write a book because I realized,
Wow.
I can't go back and think, oh, why did it take me so long to be like that deep in it? No, the point is, no one
I'm
has to
here.
spend that much time, but I needed to, and now I want to help other people. So whether it's grief,
That's
whether it's
awesome.
a layoff, the loss of a business, that they don't
Yeah.
get stuck in that
Yeah.
limbo where I was.
I love it. Tell us what people can find in Dream On. Is it another self-help book? I'm not meaning another as in a negative, but is it in a self-help category? Is it your story? Is it a bit of all of it? Tell us about what we
Oh,
can expect in that book.
yeah, yeah. So I share my story. And of course, this starts with the story of Bodo passing,
Mhm.
and but then it's an uplifting book, and
Mhm.
it has different, exercises and different paths to move forward. And while I'm providing these insights, I'm really making the reader the star, and I'm emphasizing it's
Mm.
really about cultivating your relationship with yourself. I
Yeah,
want you're always going to have the best answers for you, and here's how you can get to that place where
I
you
love that.
can make that happen for you. So,
I love that so much. You're always going to have the best answers for you. It makes so much sense when you say that. I love it. I only just talked about that with a friend recently when my boys were younger. We did an exercise, as in like a fun exercise in a school holidays. So I let them paint t-shirts for themselves. And the
Mhm.
t-shirt that I made for myself was hats on it. Of course, I talk to myself. Sometimes I need expert advice. And
That's
my friend was,
it.
and you still wear that? I said, yeah, with pride. I love
Right. It's time for a
Oh my
conference of
God.
one. Yeah.
Yes. You also mentioned your Magnetize Your Brand business
Mhm.
that you have, and I love the reason why you do it in the background. Share a little bit about
Mhm.
that, please.
Yeah, the impetus for that also mirrors that journey. So shortly after I finished writing the manuscript, I was thinking about how everyone's talking about the importance of having a personal brand, which is true.
Mm,
But a lot of the focus is on the exterior and
yeah.
almost no focus on the interior. So while presentation matters, um,
Mm,
it's not nearly as important as cultivating the person. So my
mm,
definition for a personal brand is the essence of who you are and how that essence is perceived. So I created a program that incorporates some of the principles from Dream On, and then also my lived
mhm,
experience because, as you can imagine, in that state of, having a fraction of the self-love I have now,
mhm,
confidence, my confidence was shot after Brodo passed away. So you can imagine what
mm,
that journey was like as a new business owner because my business was a side gig and I only made it a full-time business because we moved to Montenegro. So I was grieving
mhm,
and then dealing with that. So,
mhm,
trying to maintain boundaries with clients or
mhm.
negotiating, all these different scenarios where you need to advocate for yourself, where you need to be more
Yeah.
visible. And so
Mhm,
I learned the hard way. So this is a really a program that's just about cultivating the person because people hire the person at the business. It's
mhm.
not really
Yeah.
just about the business.
Yeah.
And the more you can become more of who you really are, which is just letting go of those things that are not serving you anymore, and
Mhm,
having the confidence to really stand up for your purpose and your values and the people that you serve, then that's the energy and that's the presence that helps people attract more opportunities because people really resonate with you. You're not kind of just trying to fade into the background or trying
yeah.
to show up as like an avatar of what you think a successful person in your field is supposed to show up like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we all have this idea in our head, what a successful person is supposed to look like. But at the end of the day, it's like, what do I want to look like? And
Yes.
what does success mean to me? And I think a lot of people don't ask themselves that question. They go by
Mhm.
the outside world or what we see on TikTok or Instagram or anything. There's so many visuals out there of success or what we perceive as success, and then we go by that rather than really tuning in and saying, okay, what does success actually mean to me? And I'm 53 and I'm still working on that every year because things change, and you do need to I believe you do need to refresh that every now and then, as you do with your
Yes.
brand, to come back and say, okay, I've changed a lot. What has changed in my life, and what does success mean to me now? Because success means something completely different to me now than it did like 10, 15, 20 years ago, or even before Rob died. Things shift, things change. You change so much, in particular through grief. Um, have you noticed that you would attract a lot more people who have had adversity in their lives? So is the branding business completely different from your path through grief, or does it sometimes merge?
Um, no, but I will say the I can look at like link a parallel to those early days of business. I often
Hmm.
had like situations with clients that I hear people talk about a lot that I never have those situations anymore,
Yeah,
I didn't
amazing.
always attract aligned people, whereas now
Hmm.
I don't, that's not ever an issue.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Congratulations. I really want to say that from the bottom of my heart because it just shows your own personal transformation that you can stand there saying that now. And that is really, really beautiful. It makes me very happy for
Thank
you.
you.
So, Chanoa, our time's almost up, but I do want to ask you one last question. If people um, sit there listening to your story and think, how on earth would I change my journey? As in, I don't even want to call it speed up grief because I feel like grief needs the time that it needs, full stop. There is no timeline for it, nothing. But I'm asking you this because you used that wording a couple of times in our interview today that you could have gone through it differently or faster. And I'm thinking if people feel stuck in grief, that's what I want to get to. If they feel
Yeah.
stuck in grief and they don't know how to step out of that cloud, what is it that you would say to them? Where to start? What's even the first step that they could take other than reading your book, of course?
Mm. Um, yeah, well, I agree about grief needing its time. And
Mm,
actually, I have like a little disclaimer in the intro of my book. If someone's been through
mhm.
something traumatic, like the
Yeah.
shock of the loss I experienced, I say come back to this later because it's just not a
Mhm.
time to run to try and fix anything, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
I
but
love that.
yeah, not getting stuck. So
Mhm.
the first thing I would say is to start getting comfortable with this feeling of not being able to control everything, this concept
Mm.
of the unknown. And I think that's one of the most jarring things about loss
Yeah.
because everything you had a picture of how your everyday life was and where your life
Mhm.
was going, and now, you know, a wrench has been thrown into that picture. So I would say that I do like to encourage people to start finding ways to connect with awe, but I know people have different timelines for when they can do that. It might be a very long
Mm.
time, but before you can do that, and if you're not to
Yeah.
that state yet, I would recommend starting by giving to others, like
Mm.
volunteering, doing things
Oh,
that bring other people joy. It's a great way to start
yeah.
stirring up these emotions that
Yeah.
you've been disconnected from for a while.
It's quite contagious, isn't it? When you see other
Yeah,
people enjoy. Mm. I
definitely.
love that.
Yes.
It's such a beautiful advice. I really, really love that. And to my listeners, a word of advice. Please do connect with Chanoa. We will leave the links to her website, to how you can connect with Chanoa and how you can get her book. We'll leave that in the show notes below. So whenever you watch this live, it won't be there yet, but it will be there in about half an hour. And if you love what you see, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell for more episodes of Unsilenced Grief. Chanoa, thank you so much for being here. This is Chanoa and Marie
Uh,
signing off. Bye for
thank you,
now.
Maria.
Thank you.